therapy provides the space to slow down and to pull up each of these pieces of our identity. And really that's for the client to determine what that is and who they are and what's important and what comes up. And therapy kind of gives the time and space to do that work without somebody necessarily coming at you saying, well, what is your race? What is your gender? It's just what's coming up based on what's going on around you or what has been on your mind. And then as those come out, sort of being able to be curious about them. Where did they come from? Why is it important to you? Where are you going with it? What part of that isn't serving you? And how can we work to let that go? And what part of it is serving you, right? In a way is teasing out each identity within a person so that they can let go of things that aren't working for them anymore and really embrace and lean into and grow and thrive and the pieces of identities that, help them feel rooted, help them feel empowered.
Welcome to Unpacked Culture Chronicles. I'm Danielle Marshall, an equity strategist and executive coach, and I'm thrilled to have you here. This podcast is all about exploring cultural differences, similarities, and the ways that we can begin to bridge across them. Together, we're going to dive into meaningful conversations with guests from all walks of life. We'll share stories, insights, and practical strategies for navigating the complexity of culture in our workplaces, communities, and personal lives. I'm so excited to welcome the team today from Kennedy Counseling Collective. They're a woman-owned practice here in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and they were founded by Heidi Vanderwerff and Marjorie Strachman Miller back in 2017. And what just started with the two of them has grown into a really diverse group of therapists who are deeply rooted in the community. They offer culturally responsive care for individuals, couples, kids, and families. So welcome both to the show today.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Hope we're happy to be
Thank
with
you.
you.
I'm excited to chat with you. I always start by just simply asking guests to tell us a little bit about themselves and maybe share a little bit more about the work that you're doing.
So we started our practice, like you said, just the two of us. And over time, we've gotten more and more involved with the community. With the help of our landlord, have expanded our space and hired on more team members. And we won a Great Street grant to build out a space back in
2019.
2019. And have just kind of grown from there, and always kind of, we're really fortunate to have the two of us because we are able to check in with each other on what's our intention here, how do we want to grow intentionally, what kind of practice do we want to have in the community, and that kind of thing. I really enjoy mentorship, and also deep diving into therapy. I could talk about family dynamics and therapy all day. So, so I really enjoy some of the academic aspects of the therapy world. And so we've brought on newly graduated or newly licensed clinicians and mentored them to help maybe bridge some gaps that they felt like they didn't get in graduate school, help them feel more comfortable with, say, couples or families. And then also certain modalities of therapy. To just deep dive for a second, one that I'm really interested in is called internal family systems, which is working with different parts of yourself.
Great.
And my background was in social work and started in child welfare. But I took some different paths along the way and found myself in private practice and starting this practice with Marjorie, really wanting to do something different than we had experienced. To create a team environment, to create a learning environment, that we weren't, just therapists driving across town and seeing our clients, but that we were really rooted in this community and the business community, but also just showing up and normalizing therapy, being therapists here and being people here. And my role in the business tends to be more operational. I have the sort of analytical part of me really enjoys looking at data and launching us towards growth and knowing that, our data reflects sort of the care we're giving our clients. And then spending a lot of my time doing hiring as well.
I just wanted to highlight the normalizing therapy piece because that's something that we are always rooted in too, is just, that receiving mental health care can be both very necessary, but also very growth oriented.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the overview of sort of where each of you fall into the landscape. And I kind of want to pull a thread from what both of you just said because I'm curious about this. So, Marjorie, you started off by saying that you're interested in focusing on a little bit more about like where those gaps might be. So, some of the people that you have hired or you're bringing in, they've gone through school, right? They had a traditional training, but there may be something that's missing. And then Heidi, you stepped in and you said that you wanted to cultivate this environment that was team-based, learning focused. And so I'm wondering how you bring those two components together.
Yeah, I think it's what we offer here, and it's who we hire, who we bring on board, whether it's interns or full-time therapists. And I think it's that we're looking for therapists who are curious. We're looking for therapists who want to learn more, grow their skills, but also want to support their team members in growing skills too, so that there's like, we're not the only teachers, that everyone is sort of an expert in their area, an expert in themselves, their own identity, and how that impacts the therapeutic relationship with our clients.
Mhm.
Um, Anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's just, I appreciate you recognizing that because I think that's sort of the crux of what we're thinking from all the time is, what kind of team do we want to have? Because honestly, sometimes private practice can be really isolating. And so we came from a place where we want to create connection
Mm,
among the team members. And so part of that is, having a trickle down effect of mentorship. And part of it is having, consistent structures in place. And then also a lot of our work with you was also, making sure that we're thinking about equity and, and fairness in the team also.
yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that. And like I think that's a really natural segue to the next question I want to ask. And we all have been focused on culture quite a bit.
Mhm.
And I'm curious how you approach culture in the workplace, not just with your clients, but also with your own team, right? Have you learned anything in particular as you have built that culture over time? Because I know you all have been very intentional.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I kind of hear two things in your question. One is like the team culture that we've created, where we have some group agreements, we have some norms that we ask our team to create with us and then abide by in terms of showing up with curiosity, in terms of knowing when to step forward and when to step back. I can't list them all right off the
But
top of my
yeah,
head,
like,
but
yeah, what
but
you're saying is as a team, we created group agreements
yeah.
for when we have meetings, that everyone contributed to and everyone
Right. So we
respects.
have that like intention of the team we're creating, but we also respect that each of our team members come in with their own identities, and then bring that to the client space and to the team space. And so being able to make space and welcome all of those identities
Mhm.
and respect them is really important to the work that we're doing here.
Mhm. Right, from, coming to this is really making me think about our group agreements, like coming to the space with an open mind and curiosity. And also, I think in that same one is about also, thinking through privilege and how much space am I taking up here? Am I thinking about multiple perspectives that could be going on? Um, so we're trying to think about that all the time, um, to make space for everyone.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Now, I also know that you two both bring a therapist lens to organizational culture.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering how you navigate the idea that therapy can often be seen as neutral. So hold
Mhm.
that thought for a second, right? So we know that therapy can be seen as neutral, but how do you hold the tension between understanding also that identity, politics, culture are always present in the room? Because this feels very real for the time we're living
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, I mean, that's it just I think I'll speak for both of us. For us personally right now, that is very real and, something that even when we have our meetings and check-in, we're, like, debriefing and, processing together just to be able to start our meetings together and to kind of like get centered to be able to talk about everything, because it is a lens on everything right now, and always is, right? But right now it's just like
Palpable.
palpable in DC, especially. This is something that is also important to us, what we call self of the therapist work, which is having self awareness as a therapist and knowing that actually we're not blank slates, and that that isn't actually the most effective way to be in our minds. Yes, we always think through, if I am self disclosing something or if I'm bringing myself into the room, how is it going to serve the client? Right? It's not just, I'm just, putting everything out there. But it also seems important to recognize when, clients have all different kinds of backgrounds and experiences, that if we act like we're coming from neutrality, that actually can dismiss those experiences.
Yeah. I have a deep appreciation for that because I came up in a day and age also where people talked about tabula rasa, right? A blank
Mhm.
slate. And to the point that you're making, there's never a blank slate because we're coming with something, lived experiences, our identity, the things that we enjoy or we dislike in certain cases. So there's always something that we're bringing in.
Mhm.
And I'm curious because you both mentioned that, before you go into these meetings or you're going to be talking to clients or staff, whomever, that you are centering and grounding yourself.
Mm.
What does that look like? Because I want to give people practical tips that they can walk away with.
Oh
It's
gosh.
not that pretty.
No, it's not that pretty.
But I am a big believer in venting. I think sometimes if you have someone you trust and you just need to like skim something off the top so that then you can ground, I actually do believe that can be really helpful.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And, I think it varies. It depends on, whether it's with a client or whether it's with your co-owner or whether
Mhm.
it's with your team members. But like for you and I, we often greet with a hug,
Mhm.
right? That's grounding, that touch. We laugh a lot at the chaos around us in our families and in this community in DC right now. So laughter is a big part of it. Just really like stopping in and asking, "How are you?" before you get into the agenda. Like, what's on your mind before you get in, even with clients. Like starting big. Like, what's going on around you before you even start to get into maybe some of the deeper work that you've been doing. Because to ignore that, to not give it attention, I
Mhm.
think just takes away from the work that you're doing. It takes away and even can harm the relationship that
Mm,
we have with our clients, with our team members, with each other, in those moments.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think in DC and just among sort of the busy professional group or just people in cities, just people who are busy. Um Sometimes, in therapy too, it can kind of be like a boom, rush in the seat. Okay, let's get going. I got to get the most out of my time kind of thing. And so just taking time to arrive and having that practice of sort of mindfulness, arriving in your body, in your space, just noticing how you have been feeling in ways that you may not have really been in touch with can really help. Just a little moment of mindfulness, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am appreciating this, and in particular, the fact that you both looked at each other and laughed and said, it's not always pretty, right? I think that's very real. If we're to be honest, like some of the weight of what we're carrying today is like it can be overwhelming for us at times.
Mhm.
But to be able to laugh and joke and be like, yeah, today's just been an absolute mess, or this last week feels chaotic, and just be truthful. Like I love that because it's one thing that I am hoping to see more of in the world is that we're not just pretending that everything is fine, right? We're okay. Everything's fine because it isn't for many of us at this point in time. But then also I heard you speak about like the different layers. So there's one, the centering of yourselves before you get ready to go into client work or work with the staff. And then it's also just being able to be present for the clients while you're there, like giving them a chance to sort of download, take that moment to breathe.
Mhm.
Yep.
So I kind of want to stick on this topic of the multiple identities that we bring into our work. And I'm curious what it looks like from a therapist lens to hold space for the various systems that we grow up in, excuse me. So whether that is race, culture, family norms, um, I'm curious about that, but specifically, like how do they shape healing for people?
So I just want to make sure I understand your question. So how do they shape us and how do they shape healing?
Well, I think that, well, actually, maybe we'll answer that as a two-part question because I think they
Right.
do certainly shape you. And you kind of talked
Mhm.
about that a little bit already. But I'm wondering how you hold space for the various identities that clients might bring in and ultimately how that's going to shape their healing.
I think that the healing piece for me, what comes to mind is like what's serving us and what's not, right? And like therapy provides the space to slow down and to like pull up each of these pieces of our identity. And really, that's for the client to determine what that is and who they are and what's important and what comes up. And therapy kind of gives the gives the time and space to do that work without somebody like necessarily coming at you saying, "Well, what is your race? What is your gender? What is your like?" It's just like what's coming up based on what's going on around you or what has been on your mind. And then as those come out, sort of being able to be curious about them. Where did they come from? You know, why is it important to you? Where are you going with it? How, what part of that isn't serving you? And how can we work to let that go? And what part of it is serving you? Right. And so you can kind of like tease out each, and this is the internal family systems work too, in a way, is like teasing out each identity within a person, um, so that they can let go of things that aren't working for them anymore and really embrace and lean into and grow and thrive into the identities that and the pieces of identities that you know, help them feel rooted, help them feel empowered.
Yeah, and I would add that a lot of times the things that are being let go are things that were put upon us.
Mm,
So, right, so things that were not ours to be responsible for to begin with,
yep.
but, trauma, institutional racism, being treated unkindly or in ways that didn't work for us as children, all of these kinds of things, um, that sort of when reflecting on how were we each impacted by that, once being able to, like, unlearn it and learn that it was basically not our fault, right? That
Yeah.
can be really freeing. And also with, looking at family and ancestral work, um, a lot of times a couple questions I like to ask, when kind of gathering information is kind of along the lines of what Heidi was saying is, okay, what strengths does our, ancestors, what strengths do our ancestors bring and carry, and how did they get through, the personal hardships or joys or the family that they cultivated, the rituals that were created in the family? Like what do I want to carry on with me? And then what do I want to let go of or change or do differently? Because they were all doing the best that they could, all the ones behind me. But what maybe do I want to be more free from or choose to do differently or more
Yeah.
intentionally?
I love that framing because I often use what serves us or what does not serve us as
Mhm.
well. But I think the nuance that you've added is sometimes people can't really name what serves them in that moment. They're
Mhm.
like, I'm
Mm.
not really sure. Like, I come from this family, we have these things that we do, but they can't necessarily say, I really enjoy this piece of us, or like, wow, look at the strength of, my forefathers,
Mhm.
foremothers in
Mhm.
this case. But what you're teasing out is this is what we're proud of. Right?
Mhm.
This is the resilience in our family. And, we want to hold on to those things, which
Mhm.
I think then makes answering that other question about what doesn't serve you easier because it doesn't feel like you're rejecting all of your identity, all of
Right.
your cultural upbringing.
Right. It doesn't have to be an either or.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Um, now you all model in your work curiosity, and you've mentioned this a couple of times already. You model curiosity as a value in the workplace. How does that shape the way that your team works with clients? And how might it help? This is the big one for me right now because I'm doing a lot of work around this. How might curiosity help others move through tough conversations?
Yeah. I mean, the it is a big one. I just wanna name too that we have learned a lot from you around
Mhm.
this too, so we really appreciate you and,
Thank you.
your coaching, if I can say that.
I welcome
And
that.
Okay, good. And I think, you know, for me, so is it okay if I deep dive into internal family systems a little bit?
Please,
Okay.
absolutely. You're here to drop all your knowledge on us. Tell us
Okay.
what you want.
Okay. Well, so curiosity is a huge concept um, in the IFS, and it's basically like often a starting point for ourselves and others. Where it's like if we're really reactive to something, can you just find like a little drop of curiosity, just like a little opening of interest about either yourself or people that you're with? And that starts off a place of really trying to understand and connect, um, rather than just being completely kind of lost in our own reaction and probably most likely repeating old patterns
Mm,
that we have, right? And I guess I just want to say too that it is extremely hard when things are so polarized. It is. It's just really hard.
yeah.
Thinking about how curiosity is an interceptor for anxiety, right? Like when things are coming at us, when our team is feeling anxious, um, being able to slow down and sort of intercept with curiosity and say like, okay, I'm curious how you came to that conclusion, or what do you think, or and it could be about operational things, but it could also be about clients, and really just empowering them to take a different lens, to slow down, to wonder. Um, I think shifts some of the responsibility from the person receiving that to back to the person who needs the help, who needs the clarity.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that we learned from you. Also, I'll say because when kind of met with anxiety or fear or anger, the sometimes the natural I'll speak for myself, sometimes the natural impulse is to go with, um, okay, let me try to figure this out and kind of guess at what's going on here. But then when you can put assumption aside and go with curiosity, that just opens it up
It
so
becomes
much
Mhm.
more.
collaborative.
Right. It becomes
Mhm.
collaborative and not like a guessing game or something where things can
Yeah.
get entrenched.
That feels really empowering, I think, on a couple of levels, whether we're talking about our own clinical health in this case, right, our mental
Mhm.
health and well-being, or we're just navigating the grocery store, the bank, whatever it is that we need to do from day to day. It's like, how do we move beyond just the assumptions? And it's interesting because I am personally hearing more and more assumptions, and I have to check myself sometimes in real time. And I'm like, wait, do you know this to be true? Or are you just believing this because, fill in the blank? And so to that end, like I know I have my own practices around being curious in the moment, but like what are things that you call on either as individuals or with your clients to like prompt them to be curious?
I mean, I think, one of the things that we just sort of said is really try to ask a lot of questions, just to I don't I don't know if this sounds bad, but to like put it back to them, you know what I mean? To say, well, what did you mean by that? Or where did you hear that? Or um, you know, and for me personally, sometimes um just kind of perking my ears to, like, what this might be about for the person speaking,
Yeah. It's the
and
listening under like between the lines sort of.
Yeah.
right, and so then asking the client, so basically to, like, take what they're saying and, like, yes, taking the emotion, kind of extracting that, and then saying, "Okay, let's, like, focus inward on with that emotion and, what it's about for you and kind of, what you wanna do with that. How do you wanna honor this core emotion that you're feeling?"
Yeah. Can
Yeah.
I want to ask a follow-up question about that? And I hadn't planned on this, but I read somewhere not too long ago that people have a very difficult time actually defining their emotion. Like they might say they're sad or they're angry, but there's often something underneath that. And I'm wondering like what your experience has been, how true this holds. What do you
Mhm.
think? I see you shaking your heads yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. We have feeling charts in, like, every room for a reason.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that there's a generational shift too,
For
right? In
sure.
schools now, there's so much focus on social emotional learning that kids have a wider vocabulary, but that Yeah, and when we're talking about 2 or 3 emotional words, like, that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we're capable of as humans. We just don't have the vocabulary always to identify the nuances of those
Mhm.
emotion words, and let alone to, like, notice in our bodies what's different and what happens with those different emotions.
Mhm.
Anger could be shame, it could be all sorts of other things underneath there, and so,
Mhm.
um, yeah, really, for me, like, as somebody who grew up not having that educational background, in elementary school with the social emotional learning they do now, like, learning to slow down, to take a breath, to wait to respond to something, just to sit in silence sometimes with somebody, because more often than not, they have their own solution already. They
Sure.
just need the space to access it. Sometimes with questioning and support, but other times with just silence and calm.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean the generational shift I see also for sure. Even like Gen Zers often have more feeling words accessible and are being more outspoken about things like anxiety and depression,
Yes.
which is nice to see. And I'm trying to make sure I'm answering your original question, but something that came to mind for me too was being able to start with something like the body sensation of, okay, just like slowing down and connecting to what is the physical feeling I'm feeling, and then either being able to describe it or tie a feeling word. Like to me, the intellectual ability to tie a feeling word isn't always necessarily the most important thing because the less words you have for something, often the older or like the younger um, that piece inside of you is, right? Like, the older the sort of, like, either wound or, reaction is, if that makes sense, right? Like, if you're completely flooded and shut down, that's probably something that started a very long time ago, and there's just no words for that, and that's okay. And so being able to start from there, but really getting to know it and understanding what's underneath that and what's the core need there, and then I believe that connecting to yourself in that way then opens us up to be able to connect to others.
Yeah. I think your words are landing on me pretty powerfully right now. I just had a conversation with someone who was struggling with this idea of enoughness, right? Like, I'm not enough,
Mhm,
whatever that happens
mhm,
to mean. And
mhm,
I asked her what was coming up as she said that, and she couldn't name it, right? So,
mhm.
again, getting back to that emotion, but as we were digging in around it a little bit more, it sounded like it came from childhood.
Yeah,
Right?
for
Someone
sure.
at some point said something or indicated in some way, "You're not enough to be
Mhm.
qualified to do X," or,
Right.
whatever it happens to be, and that is very interesting for me because I had not made that connection between the length of time and our ability to articulate it.
Mhm,
Mhm.
Mm.
mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot there. This episode of Unpacked Culture Chronicles is brought to you by Culture Principles, a coaching and consulting practice helping people build real inclusion from the inside out. Because inclusion isn't just about policies, it's also about our people. And while strong policies matter, it's cultural awareness that brings them to life. Our cultural competency coaching program supports leaders, team members, and change makers alike in showing up with greater clarity, confidence, and care. To learn more, visit us at culture-principles.com/coaching. We'd love to work with you. So let me switch gears a little bit here. Uh, there has been a huge conversation going on for the last couple of years around finding a therapist who shares your identity.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear what your take is on this. Do we need this? Can we do without it? Is anyone capable?
I think, unfortunately, the answer is it depends.
That's
And
fair.
the most important question is for you to each of us to take a moment and think about, what do I need out of therapy right now? Right? It's sometimes, if the work is really heavily identity focused, it feels safer to have somebody with some shared identities as you, or as much as you can kind of gather on a website, that they share with you. And other times it can feel safer to not share the identity of your therapist in some way. So it really just depends on you at any given time when you're seeking out therapy, what you need, what makes you feel the safest and most connected. And I'll add that it's okay to start therapy with somebody and you realize that it isn't jiving, whether it's because of identity work or something else, and to switch gears and find somebody else. That really the most important thing is that you're getting out of therapy what you need.
Yeah. Heidi, can I go back to something that you just said? Because you said there are moments where it may feel better to work with someone who does share your identity and others where it feels safer to not have that same identity. Could you
Yeah.
give us an example? Because I'm not as clear on like when I might not want someone who has my identity.
Yeah, I think an example might be if you're exploring a part of your identity and you've been on that journey for a while, and maybe you've already done therapy with somebody that shares that identity with you. And now you feel like your next goal is to work with somebody who can help you connect with people who don't share that identity. I'm thinking about like
Mm,
sexuality, right? If you're from a family system where your sexuality is not being accepted widely, you might want to work with a therapist who shares or who's an expert in exploring sexuality and helps you on that journey. But you might get to a point where you're like, okay, I actually want to work with somebody who doesn't share that identity with me and really can help me prepare to have some hard, um, some hard conversations with family, or to practice what it might feel like in a room with somebody who doesn't share that piece of me, and how to navigate that.
yeah. Thank you for that example because what comes up for me as I hear that is I'm seeing a parallel to equity work. A lot of
Mhm.
times in equity work, we might tell different individuals, like, start having certain conversations within your social identity, right? So if it was racial, if it's gender based, LGBTQ plus, et cetera, like we want you to focus on that community because somewhat it's healing, right? To be able to have those
Mhm.
conversations with people that understand your journey. It's not exactly, equal because we all have different life experiences, but there is this opportunity to say, like, there's some commonality here. But then eventually it's not the goal is not to just stay there permanently, right? It's to be able to move into these other groups where you are, to your point, challenged by people who don't necessarily think like you, right? To be able to expand the language that we use, vocabulary, understanding, even understand the questions that they might ask us, because sometimes we just don't know because we're not exposed to it.
Yep,
Mhm.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I was also thinking about, like, say, a religious identity. We have
Mm,
some clients who may have felt hurt by being part of a religious culture and want someone who's not from that identity, but they want to figure out where they land and haven't decided yet, or something like that. It is very individual in that each person has within their own right to choose, who they want to see, and if someone does feel safer, or just more comfortable or more connected to or more seen by someone who shares a cultural identity, then that's great. And if somebody decides, I want someone with these certain qualities as a therapist, and if I can match that up and feel safe and seen by this person, then that's also great. So yeah, so
mhm.
it kind of comes back to the it depends.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It depends on your needs in that moment. Now, I want to come back to this idea that, people may start therapy and sometimes it's not going to feel like a good fit.
Mhm.
What encouragement or guidance would you offer someone who's had that kind of experience?
Well, I think if you find yourself in it, right, if you've had a couple of sessions and there's not a connection, I think if you have the capacity, it can be helpful and important to talk to your therapist about it. That their therapists can hear that, they're trained to hear that, and there may be something that's blocking the relationship. There may be something that just needs to come out in the open that would ultimately help that therapeutic relationship thrive. There could be some really good conversations that come out of expectations, or connection, what the client needs, the therapist may have read wrong. So I think, if you have the capacity to do that work, to bring that to the therapist can be really impactful and can really create a stronger bond in the end. However, it's also not your job as a client. And so I think also if you're like, no, this is really, misread this or I was mismatched, I need to try somewhere else or someone else,
Mhm.
not to give up on therapy. That so much of therapy is about the we keep calling it the therapeutic relationship, but it's just a connection, right? Whether it's humor or sarcasm or how it flows or, yeah, shared identities or whatever is going on in the room. I mean, I've been to a therapist where I was like, it just smells bad here. Like, I can't keep coming here because it smells bad, right? And so I was like, this office space is not working for me. The commute wasn't working. I got to try something else. So it has to feel safe. It has to feel comfortable. Um, and you have to feel like, you're being cared for in the ways that you need to be cared for in the physical space,
Mhm.
and emotionally in order to access the hard stuff that we come to therapy
Mhm.
for. So I think, trying to push through if possible, have those conversations, but also okay if not, and to keep trying, to keep searching, because therapy is really valuable and meaningful work. It's not, it's worth persevering through to find the right fit.
Yeah, I was thinking about some fine lines in there as you were
Mhm.
talking, because it's like, if it's like, oh, all these things, the commute is hard. I was starting to think about like going to the gym or something.
Yeah.
And so it's like, at some point, there might be a time to question, is it fit, or is it my patterns that I am not finding the right person? But at the same time, I do really agree and want to emphasize that if it's not the right fit, then yes, find someone else, because fit is really the most important thing. I think this hasn't happened to me so recently, but maybe 5, 10 years ago, people sometimes would say, "Oh yeah, I tried therapy." And I'd be like, "Oh, well, how many times did you go? Who did you see?" "Oh, I did one session, one time with one person," or "I did one 15-minute phone call and it
Right.
and it didn't work." So
Mhm.
Didn't work.
so just, yeah, so I hope people, to trust your instinct, that if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't feel good, yes, keep looking.
But that
Yeah.
therapy
So
is a commitment, just like the
Right.
gym, like, you gotta keep going. It's gonna take some
Right.
yeah.
And
weeks
it's hard.
or longer.
Yeah. I appreciate that. There's a couple of layers in there. So like it is a commitment, right? We're building a muscle. We're
Mhm.
retraining ourselves in a lot of cases
Mhm.
out of some
Mhm.
maybe bad habits that we may have or mindsets that might not be serving us. But I've also heard you now mention something that I don't think I hear enough about, and that is the agency that we possess as individuals to go back to the therapist and simply say, hey, the way that we're structuring this session, or the fact that you keep poking at this particular topic, like it's not working for me in this moment,
Mhm.
or that your office smells bad, said
Mhm.
kindly.
Right.
Whatever it is, there are opportunities to at least have to use your agency to
Mhm.
simply say like, hey, I need some potential changes here before we throw in the towel.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I heard is you wanting people again to take that pause and think a little bit more about like, is this the clinician in this case? Is it me? Is it a pattern? Is there some other factor? And I
Mhm.
don't know that we do that enough. I think we kind of just again make that assumption and we jump to a conclusion. This is the problem.
Right. And
This
being
is
able to have that conversation with the therapist, while it can feel really scary and difficult, um, it can enlighten some of those things.
of course.
So
I
long
can
as it's a
imagine
good
so.
therapist who's not defensive.
Yes, therapists
And
are
then
people also.
and then it becomes very clear very
Right,
quickly.
and then it's like, it's sort of like a breakup in that way, because then it's either confirming, or it's like, "Oh, wait a minute, maybe there is something more here."
Yeah. And I wanted to close with one question that we haven't really touched on just yet. And this one feels very relevant again because of the climate today. But when we think about access to identity affirming therapy, right, it can be complicated, especially for people who are in the LGBTQ plus community, non-binary, um, folks that might be immigrant, trans. Like there are a lot of reasons that this is going to come up. What do people need to know when they're navigating these systems?
Mhm. The first thing that comes to mind is about confidentiality, right? That there are actually, um, rules that therapists have to abide by for confidentiality, which, leaves the client very protected, so that it really is a safe space to come in and, um, talk about anything. Um, And also, there are things to look for when finding a therapist too, looking for the words affirming and asking those questions, when first, just, checking with this therapist even before committing to anything, and just seeing if that feels affirming and safe. Is that kind of starting the lines of what you're asking?
Absolutely. I mean, and
Okay.
you can answer it in whatever way makes sense for you. I'm just curious because I'm seeing so many people disengage from services right now because they just can't find what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah. And I think I want to talk to all those people and try to better
I'll
understand
send
what's
them your
going
way.
on. Yeah. Like here, open arms. Like what is it that you're looking for and how can we help you find that, whether it's at Kennedy or somewhere else. But the other piece that's coming to mind to me for us is one of the reasons we've stayed private pay without handling with insurance is that it really provides our clients a level of protection that we're not reporting back to insurance, diagnoses, even notes, that really you're paying for a level of safety and security by going private pay, and then you can get the reimbursement in a much more controlled way. Um, but that's yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, for example, for us, we, at the beginning of the process, we check what out-of-network benefits, the client has so they know what to expect. And I would say also to people looking that it's okay to ask about sliding scale too, if either to ask about, "Can you tell me about my out-of-network benefits?" Because many people don't realize they even have that as an option. Um, and if I don't have any, is there anyone who would be willing to, do a sliding scale for me?
Yeah. Thank
Which
you
a
for
lot
that
of
tip.
therapists would. Mm,
Yeah. I think that's one of the challenges for sure is that we don't, and, I feel like I'm reasonably educated on things and I still don't know what the terminology is all the time when
mhm,
I go in to see, a professional, whether it
mhm,
is a medical doctor, a psychologist, et cetera. It just, what am I supposed to say in order to elicit the response that I need?
mhm.
Um, Okay. Well, ladies, thank you so much for spending some time chatting with me today. The last question I always ask every guest is there anything coming up in your business that you want to share with listeners and how can they get in touch with you?
Well, to get in touch with us, you can um, find us through avenues like LinkedIn or our website. Just submitting an inquiry will get to our inbox.
KennedyCounselingCollective.com.
Thank
Great.
you. We will make
Um,
sure that goes in the show notes as well.
appreciate that. And I think, today we've talked a lot about curiosity and about learning. And something that is exciting that we have coming up is that we are building a training arm to our business. And so we will be offering continuing education for those in our team, but also outside of our team, building that up over the next year. So for those professionals who need continuing ed, we will be a place to come and land. And so please do follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all those places, so that you can stay connected and hear about when that launches and join us for continued continued learning and growth.
So I love this. Some new developments since the last time we've talked. Also, this is congratulations first off because that is an undertaking. But I love that you're going to be able to provide more services to the broader community, even beyond the clinicians that are with you. So, ladies, thank you again for the time today. This has really been an enjoyable conversation.
Same. Thanks,
Same,
Danielle.
likewise. Thank you. So good to see you.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. It makes a big difference in helping us grow this community. And if you're looking for coaching or resources to take your cultural awareness to the next level, visit us at culture-principles.com/coaching. And remember, where curiosity leads, connection follows. Be well.